All right, well, welcome everyone to our first webinar of a four-part series. I'm Melissa Marshall. I'm a strategic account executive with MilliporeSigma, who focuses on the emerging life science space across the country. And as part of what I cover is our relationship with Nucleate as a whole. Over the past several years, MilliporeSigma and Nucleate have been working to collaborate closely. From the beginning, the MilliporeSigma team supported Nucleate's Activator program and fully embraced the Nucleate mission. This looks like participating in Nucleate panels, showing up at big pitch events, the annual summit, hosting discussions and networking events at the MilliporeSigma US headquarters in Massachusetts, giving access to senior leaders to help Nucleate leaders learn and grow. We consider ourselves to be much more than a sponsor of Nucleate, just as we see ourselves as more than a vendor, providing products and services to power your work. Our aim is to be a true partner in science, working in concert with the scientific community. We're happy to continue the work and deepen our involvement with Nucleate to enable future leaders like yourselves in biotech. Just as a call out for what's next, we have a fellowship program that we will be piloting in 2026. This program will run for the first half of 2026 at a handful of universities, including Duke, Rice, UT Austin, UCSF, Berkeley, and UCLA. For this fellowship, our target audience is focused on, and our target audience for the fellowship and the talk today is focused on current and future PhDs. As we discussed this fellowship, we realized it would be very important to do two things. One is to host a webinar series, starting with a discussion about non-traditional career paths for PhDs. And it can be a lot to figure out what to do with your life and your career as you're graduating. Our panelists have been where you are now and considering what to do next. Whether you're interested in the fellowship or just want to learn more about options in the world, it would be a great talk for you. And the second goal is to make sure that you know that we welcome the opportunity to talk with you today. We see great value in employing scientists in a number of roles, many of which you will hear about today. With that, I do realize I skipped over Carolyn, our Nucleate opening, and just want to make sure you guys have your moment for introduction.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, of course, to everybody from Millipore that's going to talk. For those who don't know, Nucleate is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are supported by sponsors like Millipore. We provide a number of educational programming, including the webinar that you're at right now. We also offer a suite of other webinars and 101 courses, as well as our flagship program, the Activator. I'll post our link tree a little bit later so you can get a high-level view of what we do, but that's pretty much all I wanted to say, and I'll pass it off to Millipore.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'd like to jump into our discussion, starting off by inviting each of our panelists to introduce themselves, their PhD in specific areas of study, where and when they obtained their PhD, and what their job title is today. So we can start with Willem. I'll just go in order on my screen.
All right. Hi, I'm Will Koels. I have a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Twente in the Netherlands. Currently, I'm the head of technology pioneering as part of the corporate technology office. So that's my role.
Great. Alicia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Milicia Golick. I obtained my PhD in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology from the University of Michigan, where I studied how changes in gene expression contribute to phenotypic evolution. I am currently a biology field application scientist and manager at MilliporeSigma, and I've been with the company since 2019.
Thank you. Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly Haley. I got my PhD from the University of Southern Mississippi, and I researched gene regulation using yeast as a model organism for leukemogenesis. Hadn't said that in a while. And currently, I do projects and execution for the customer excellence teams in North America here for MilliporeSigma. So that's kind of like our customer service, tech service type of groups.
James?
I am James. I got my PhD from Texas A&M. In 2015, I studied female reproductive biology and farm species, specifically looking at placental development, and I am currently a strategic account executive at MilliporeSigma.
Thank you. And Duray?
Hi, I'm Dari Jan, and I got my PhD in microbiology from UC Berkeley in 2019. And my project was on investigating the enzyme secretion pathway in filamentous fungi for plant biomass degradation. And right now I'm an account manager for multiple different types of accounts, but my main ones being Stanford University, my arch nemesis, and MBC Biolabs, which is an incubator.
Thank you. So a wide range of study for everyone, but also a wide range of jobs. So just to give a little more context to what everyone's actually doing and what their job title actually entails, I'll give a chance for everyone to go back through and give a little more context around what they do today. We'd start back with Willem.
Very good. So I mentioned I head up the technology management team. It really has two main focus areas. One is external, which is connecting with the external ecosystem of technologies. That could be startups, it could be academics, that could be larger companies that have a certain asset that could be interesting for our portfolio. And then internally, I arrange, since we have 10 businesses in life sciences, I basically make sure that the tech roadmaps that we have are well aligned and that we really bring value to our customers. So that's what I do on a daily basis.
Thank you. Alicia?
Yep. As a biology field application scientist, my role is to help connect researchers across the country with the products and technologies from our biology portfolio that will help them do their science. And my team does this in a number of ways. So we do in-person events like seminars, hands-on trainings, work days with folks like DeRay. You'll hear her tell more about what she does day to day, but really working on trying to make sure scientists know about our products, because if they don't know about our products, they can't use them. So we do a lot of that kind of awareness and education. And then I'm also a manager. So in that role, I'm helping my team succeed, help them with the training that they need, the resources, the guidance, so that they can be successful in this role, but also grow into their next roles, whether it be with the company ideally or beyond.
All right, thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, so projects and execution sounds really vague, but what that means is basically I flex with what our organization needs. So our customer excellence team is over 300 people, and we always have a ton of projects going on, whether it's in more of the customer service side or the technical service side. And so I support those. I create a lot of assets, whether it's presentations, email communications, things like that. I work all internally. But yeah, basically coordinating efforts and helping out where I can and making sure that we can kind of work with our business partners, whether it's in e-commerce, looking at the technical info on the website or how customers can view their order status and things like that on the website, supporting all those efforts to really just improve the customer service.
James?
Yeah, so as a strategic account executive, my main job is to work with procurement departments on pricing, contracts, anything that kind of arises and causes issues. But we also work with our AMs strategically to think about products to push and things to work with their accounts on. So we kind of have a broad role.
All right, and Dari?
Yeah, so if you hear the acronym AM, it's for account manager, so someone like me. My role pretty much entails being a sales rep and being the main point of contact between MilliporeSigma and our customers at my accounts. And so this means I grow new sales and maintain relationships, help guide customers through consultative selling, and hosting fun and engaging events to provide awareness for new products and existing products. And so organizing events like seminars, I can work with Alicia or our other biologists, biology field application scientists, or I can give them myself, which I have. And I host office hours and meetings with customers. And some of the fun things I like to do is host, as we near holidays, I host things like Christmas market and do more fun activities with customers. And I really think this role is really fun because I never stop learning, since there's various science that's out there aside from just working on what I used to do. And I really enjoy networking within the scientific community.
Thank you. So a broad range of tasks and day-to-day activities. I'm sure what you're doing today isn't exactly what you thought when you were obtaining your PhD. So thinking back to your school days, what did you envision for your future, and what did you think you'd be doing professionally in the long run?
And I'll start again. So what I wanted to do when I came out of did my graduate studies was I wanted to develop one cool product, and fortunately I could go to R&D. I remember after a year and a half, we had our first product that we wanted to pitch to a customer, and the answer that they gave was, we don't need this, we need something else. So we had to pivot and develop something that was better, faster, cheaper, etc. So, but in the end, luckily, I was able to develop a couple of products. So that's quite fascinating. But I want to leave everyone here with getting that customer feedback is absolutely critical, because that's in the end what is making or breaking a good idea.
Thank you.
Did you
Yeah,
want
keep
us all to
going.
answer this one?
We could all go around and I'll let you
Okay.
guys take it in order.
Sounds good. So like many PhD students, I wandered into academia wanting to be a PI. But through my journey, I definitely realized that wasn't the path that was going to make me happiest. So I started exploring things like science communication and outreach, teaching. I considered nonprofit work for a while. I considered scientific writing. But as I explored all of these different paths, it became clear to me that industry, and specifically starting in a technical sales role, really fit my personality and my skill set, and has ended up being a really great fit. And I'm quite happy with where I've ended up, even though it's very different than where I thought I would be.
Yeah, I think same or similar, except I knew pretty early on in graduate school I did not want to be a PI in academia. There was so much stress in trying to get grants and things like that, so much unknown, that I really did not want to have to deal with that. So I was still wanted to do research, but more in maybe a service facility type of capacity. And I did do that for a while. So I did next gen sequencing when it was new and exciting. Like, I feel like now I have to say the first gen of next gen sequencing. And so I stayed in kind of the hospital sector for a while doing that. But then I did transition over into industry, first in R&D for next gen sequencing. But then finally to the business side when I joined MilliporeSigma. And honestly, I've never looked back. I have loved every interaction here. We'll get more into, I'm sure we'll talk more about like what skills still get used even in these different functions. But I have to say that transition to the business, really, I found my niche there. And like Alicia, I just haven't looked back.
Yeah, so I mean, initially when I wanted to get my PhD, I wanted to teach, so that was why I got into grad school. I took a course in undergrad called histology, fell in love with it, and the only way to teach at that level was getting a PhD. So I really didn't have initially any interest in research. It was just that was a path I had to take forward. So that's what got me into it.
I think I knew early on that I wanted to go into industry, but I kept an open mind when I was doing graduate school. And as I was nearing graduating, I was like, okay, I do know that I want to move into industry. And eventually my long-term goal is to start my own company, but right now that's not where I want to be. But I do want to grow my career to be where I can be there. But starting off, I wanted to be a little bit in a scientific role, and I knew I really liked communicating with people. And so I kind of looked for a role where it included the scientific side of things as well as communicating with people. And that actually was a field application scientist role. And that's how I ended up going into industry.
Great, which is a perfect pivot into our next topic to talk about is what drew you into a career in industry versus academia? And then how do you learn about MilliporeSigma? So I think
All right.
that's a perfect segue to it.
I'll start again. I'm a very curious person, and I want to make an impact, right? So those are the two things that really characterize me. If you do a PhD, you can go very deep in one topic, but I didn't want to be pigeonholed in one specific topic. I wanted to explore other things. In industry, you have so many facets that you have to think about, right? How do we manufacture a product? What is the quality of a product? What is a response that the customer gets? How basically do we market the product? So throughout my career, I could really not only do different topics and different scientific fields, but also dig into those relationships and that network that is really important to make an impact on someone's lives. And I think as an academic, you can make an impact by having more scientific discoveries. But from an industrial perspective, that's where it really hits the customers. And I think that's what I really enjoyed and still enjoy right now. So hopefully it resonates with the others as well. So
Yeah, so for me, when I was starting to realize that I didn't want to be a PI, I was starting to look for where did I feel like I could grow and advance in my career, and industry seemed to have that. I'm definitely a, lifelong learner. I feel like we hear that a lot from people who are like everyone on the call here today. I wanted an opportunity to continue to grow in my career. So after my PhD, I ended up being a lab manager and research scientist for a couple of years. And this is what really exposed me to the sales side of science and more of the business side of science, because I started having to ask for quotes for our lab and making sure we had enough grant money and figuring out all of this behind the scenes stuff that makes science happen. And I like to tell people I failed out of a career development program because I got a job. Probably the best way you can fail out of a career development program. But that came from some informational interviews where I started talking to sales folks and realized that in particular roles and at particular companies, the scientific background was really important to how we do sales. So at MilliporeSigma, I think we really we start with the science. We believe in the science. The science is at the heart of everything we do. So it was really a great opportunity for me to still use these years and years of blood, sweat, and tears I spent at the bench, but apply it in a different way. So I learned about MilliporeSigma from being a customer, and then there happened to be a position open up that let me start my career here.
Oh my gosh, we are so the same person. So yeah, what really drew me to MilliporeSigma was when I was ready to transition out of research and out of the lab. The schedule had gotten a little bit grueling in the R&D group that I was in. And so I saw an opportunity to join technical service at MilliporeSigma. And so, of course, I knew the company from, again, being a customer. In fact, in graduate school, we all had jobs, and I was in charge of the lab water machine and making sure the cartridges got changed and all that stuff. So I was very, very familiar with Millipore. And of course, I knew Sigma and all the red caps. So yeah, I had the opportunity to join technical support. And so I jumped in because I was able to be a scientist on the phone. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it at first, to be honest. It was so different. But what I realized was talking to our customers, I learned more science when I was on the phones and technical service than I did during all my years in R&D. It's really fascinating. We are a company primarily of scientists. And so when you call in and you talk to us, whether you're talking to an application specialist or a salesperson or customer service, technical service, 9 times out of 10, you're probably talking to a scientist, whether you realize it or not. So that was just really exciting. I love that part of it for sure. And then, of course, things have evolved, but still love what we're doing. And in the end, it's all about helping our customers and making sure that science happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think similar for me, like at the end of my PhD, I realized I didn't want to stay in academia. It wasn't for me. Honestly, kind of scrambled because, you've been in school for so long. It's like, oh gosh, what do I do now? But then, doing some soul searching, talking to friends and family, I thought sales would be something fun. So honestly, I applied for like 25 companies, heard from one. got the job, and I've been in the industry ever since, and just really love it. I didn't want to be in academia, but I didn't want to be away from the science, because I think, like all of us, we love the science. So I wanted something to where I could stay attached to it and still work with it. And so yeah, I got a job, and then I've bounced around a couple companies. MilliporeSigma, I had the opportunity from when I met with a colleague that I had known for a number of years. They said they had a position open, and I was very happy to come work for such a wonderful company. So that was kind of my path to it.
Ironically enough, I hated sales reps and I used to shut the doors on them. And I never envisioned myself being in this role, but here I am. And the way I stumbled into this role is I met actually my current manager at a vendor show. I was a field application scientist at that point, and I was supporting my sales rep. And he had his table next to us. And the connection was that my general manager at that moment used to be my manager's previous manager. And so this is kind of where the networking kind of kicks in. And originally he asked if I was interested in sales. And I said, absolutely not. Do not reach out to me again. And then there was a reduction in workforce in our company where they cut 25% of the employees. And I was one of them. And my manager had reached out back to my old general manager saying, hey, is there anybody who got laid off that's good? And it was me. And so he reached out for the second time, and he was like, hey, are you interested? And at that point, I started reconsidering, because this was kind of the start of when the layoffs was starting. As you guys know, it's kind of peaking at this point. And I wanted something to be more stable, thinking about starting a family, but also I wanted to transition into more of business development and strategy side of things. And this, I felt like, was the great transition for that. And this is where I'm also able to network with a lot of different people and scientists. And I would say that in the since I've started my career in 2019, I've been in 4 different companies, and MilliporeSigma is a really awesome place to be because of like the support and the resources that we have. And I think the biggest fear going into this role was that, one, I wasn't going to hit my target and wasn't going to make my commission. And maybe I just wouldn't be very good at it. But our company has a really great training program where we have the whole quarter where we're dedicating for onboarding and different types of training for products if you wanted to learn more about them, but also like for consultative selling. So we have classes that we're taking for those so that you're better prepared to be able to talk to customers and be able to support them. And also, I think when you're transitioning to this type of role, you want to be making sure asking questions like, hey, what kind of training programs do you have? What kind of professional development programs do you have? And also they told me that I had a guaranteed commission for the first quarter where I'm learning and getting up to speed of things, which gave me a little bit more confidence in starting something that was very, very unsure about.
It's a lot to touch on in there, just in that response. So with that, I'm sure Dari's not the only one who doesn't care for sales reps, doesn't envision ever being in a commercial setting, or closes the door on us. However, there's another side to it. But I'm sure you're not alone in those worries or preconceived notions. So did anyone else have any other concerns or worries when looking to transition into industry or sales, or specifically MilliporeSigma?
I didn't have any reservations, so I think everything is open, and we live in a very scientific world, right? In our company, so you're not that far away from basically a very scientific topic.
Yeah, I think for me, especially moving into a role that is housed in a sales team and is sales, I was worried that I would step too far away from the science and no longer feel like I could claim the title scientist. But I couldn't have been further from the truth in that thought. I learn new things every day, and being at a company that is pushing the envelope, I get to learn about new technologies and help support new technologies. So things like organoids, CRISPR, things that I may not have actually gotten to touch with my own hands in whatever niche area of R&D or academia I may have ended up in, I get to learn and do and help others learn and do about all of these really exciting things. So I was worried I wouldn't feel like my PhD was still useful, but it absolutely is.
Similar. And oh my gosh, you say CRISPR. And I think when that first came out, I was like, my entire PhD could have been cut down so much. I spent so much time like screening knockouts. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I think there was like a little niggle of fear, especially as I transitioned out of tech service into other roles, about not using my degree. Like I worked so hard to get my degree and now I wasn't really focusing on science. But being a scientific company, honestly, that's never going to happen unless you want it to. So I could totally just immerse myself completely in customer experience and not really keep up with the science, but that's not who I am. So while I do my job and I do that part of it, I also love to still go, like if someone needs help at a trade show and I can be there, I am there. I love to talk to the customers about the science. I love to keep up, when we have new products releasing, I like to jump into some of those seminars just to see what they could do. Think about maybe how I would have used them in the past. So I think it's all about perspective and keeping up with your interests in the way that you can and applying it to your role, because it's a science company. So we're never really out of the science. It's just how far in the science do you choose to be?
Yeah, I think my greatest fear moving into sales was selling, kind of like Daria had said earlier. It's something being on the bench for so long and doing something that you've never done. It was definitely a scary step, but honestly, I think it was a very natural transition. I think when you're in grad school getting your PhD, you're having to sell your research. You're having to sell it to your PI. You're having to sell it to a paper, right? Or you're trying to get published. You're trying to sell it to grants. So it's really not a lot different. It's really just connecting with people, talking to people in the lab, introducing them to new technology, to Kelly's point when we come up with that. So no, I think it's a lot more of a natural transition than you think. Like I understand you're really looking over the precipice when you're looking to get into industry, but it's a pretty natural fit for people from grad school who've got their PhD. So
Now, I guess with all those preconceived notions and thoughts and worries along the way, when you did enter the corporate world, I'm sure there were some surprises that you found, either positive or negative, and maybe surprising ways that you're using your PhD today. Would anyone like to touch on that and what surprises you found?
Lisa, can I go and say one more thing on
Yeah.
basically the maybe misperception of sales? Because I saw one of the questions in the chat that, are you able to honestly talk with customers about the products, or do you always have to sell the product? I think in many cases, if we don't have the right product, it's actually better not to sell it, because then we have more questions on our side on why is it not working, etc. And that doesn't make business sense. And quite often I was surprised how intense the discussions are, that customers actually know a lot about our products, and they can give us insight on how we can even improve our products going forward. It's really fascinating, and it all happens at that customer interface. But then to your question, Melissa, switching to the next question, I do think that from my PhD, I learned two main things. One, scientifically, I can do a deep dive on a topic. I can learn and make that very comfortable with on that topic, and I know everything about that subject. That's one. And then secondly, and maybe that holds for many of you that are attending here, you have to convince your advisor that you did enough, right? You have to make the right presentation. You have to really be convincing. Those two characteristics, I think I could definitely use in all my roles that I had over the years. That is very important. What is probably not evident if you're in academics and you go to industry is that customer interface. Because as I said, I always want to give an impact, right? Does it actually mean something to the end user? Being in front of a customer is the best way to really learn what are the real issues that we have to solve, because you can have a very nice academic topic that is great in theory, but eventually, if it is not used, it will not have an impact. And I think that customer interface for the 12 years that I was on the commercial side was just fantastic. And as many of my colleagues here, we are absolutely customer obsessed, because that's the gold, right? So the end user knows what is working, what is not working, and that's probably what I didn't get from my PhD yet, but it's super satisfying to have that on the commercial side.
So for me, I think I'll answer the part about what I feel like I'm using most for my PhD in my current role. And there's a few things. I think the reading and learning, whether it be about your PhD topic or not, you got to be an expert in some way. And it was probably reading a lot of primary literature papers, dissecting a protocol, figuring out the spots that don't make sense and figuring out what that means. All of that ability to learn and deep dive, I use it so often, especially as a technical sales specialist. I have to help someone walk through a protocol. I have to help them troubleshoot. We want to make sure people using our products are successful, and a lot of that is understanding how they're using it and how we say it should be used, and all of those things kind of coming together. The other big one is the teaching and presenting aspect. So we've heard a little bit about, you have to make your advisor say, yes, you can graduate. But I also had a lot of teaching that I did in my PhD and science communication skills, where I was connecting with very different audiences. And I think that's still true in sales. You could be walking in to a customer who is just starting a project and they're not an expert yet. And you could just be introducing a technology to them, and you have to meet them where they're at. You could walk the next lab over, talk about the exact same topic, but they're an expert. They know probably more than you do, but you know more about your product than they do. So it's kind of this like having to meet whoever your audience is where they're at and talk their language and change your message depending on who you're talking to. So I think those skills combined are what really helped me be successful. And I practiced a lot of them in my PhD, and I practice them even more now.
Yeah, I think similar for me. Not shocking at this point. But yeah, I think some of the transferable skills for me was definitely time management. I mean, when you have to plan your experiments and you have everything calculated to a T to make sure you can get it done in time, that's going to transfer to everything you ever do for the rest of your life. I'm very much a planner for that. Also being able to see the big picture, right? So understanding how the details work, but also keeping those details in context of the bigger picture and how it really impacts science or a product portfolio or things like that. So that kind of big picture thinking, similar to Alicia, I was really into a lot of presentation building in graduate school. I kind of became the poster expert. Every time we went to like a conference, everyone would send me their poster and I would be zoomed into 400%, like one pixel at a time, making things perfect. That was me. And so it's not shocking that I went into like a communications type role where a lot of what I do is create high impact PowerPoint presentations, whether it's for the executives or to share with business partners. But I think also flipping to the other side of the question in terms of what was surprising, I think we already talked about this a little, but learning that it's a company mostly of scientists. So when I was a customer, I would call tech service thinking, oh, you're not going to be able to help me. Like, I know way more about this than you do. I don't even want to talk to these guys, but I have to. That's not the case at all. I felt like a real jerk, honestly, when I learned how incredibly intelligent and how many PhDs we have on the phones in tech support. They really are a huge resource, and they want to help you. They want to understand your experiment. They want to help troubleshoot. They'll suggest controls, things like that. So honestly, I've even sat with a customer on the phone and completely designed out an experiment with extra controls so we could pinpoint exactly which reagent was causing the issue because there was too many options, right? So I think that was a surprise, just like learning how scientific this company really is. I mean, it's a business, but yeah, it's a science business.
Yeah, the biggest thing I took out of my PhD is being able to pivot. I mean, I think we all know that in the lab at the bench, nothing's ever going to go smoothly or perfectly. You always have to adjust and change on the fly. And it's the same when you're walking halls, when you're an account manager working with customers. I mean, things are going to happen and you have to stay calm and cool and be able to pivot and help to, adjust something, or, to Alicia's point, like work through a protocol and, see where we can make some changes. So that was definitely the biggest thing I took out of my PhD was that, and it's really served me well through my career.
One of the biggest surprises is that I actually ended up really liking this role. And that's because I really like helping scientists. I'm a scientist at core. And as I was mentioning about before about consultative sales, so I get to really sit down with the customer and really understand what the project is about and what they're trying to achieve or whatever they're trying to troubleshoot. And after talking through about the project, I can make recommendations that might be a great solution for their issue. And problem solving together really gives me satisfaction that I'm still kind of being more in the scientific side of things, as well as I also really enjoy doing like posters and giving talks, so I can still do demos and give seminars. And I think one other skill that I found very transferable was for a qualifying exam. You're supposed to present your slides, and the committee is are able to ask any kind of question that's shown on the slide, and you're supposed to give answers. And I think that is a really, really important skill to hone in on, because then you're able to speak on your feet. People can give any kind of answer, and that's fine, but you want to be able to provide a concise answer and not blab on about and give fluff, right? And so those are really great skills to really practice.
Thank you. So for our last question before we open things up for Q&A, with all of the surprises that you found and concerns you had before entering into industry, what advice do you have for the audience today as they consider their own path?
I'll start again. Many people that are at the beginning of their career think in a linear fashion. I'm going to do this job first, and then I'm going to grow up the corporate ladder. I know from my own experience from almost everyone around me is that careers are not linear, right? You basically, during your life, you will pivot to do something else. And I can only encourage people to just get started, right? Because I think things will change and situations will point you in a certain direction. And I think that's the exciting part of it as well. And with more and more change these days, I think you will experience that more and more. So, but don't think as a linear path, but do get started. But I think if I look at basically our executive team, so basically report to the executive team, almost all of them, if not all of them, have commercial experience, because I think in the end, it's all about the customer. The sooner you can get that experience, the sooner you can be very customer obsessed. I think that will be super important at one point. If you don't have that customer experience, you might live in a theoretical world, but that's where the rubber hits the road. I think that's also if I'm, and I'm not saying this because I'm on this panel, but I truly believe that my 12 years on the commercial side were the best time of my career, because that's every day there was a different challenge from the customer, a different opportunity at the customer. It was just fantastic. So that would be my advice. Don't think linear, think let's go and do this.
I have a feeling a lot of our answers are going to be similar, so I'll try and keep mine super short. You don't have to find the perfect next step for your career. Find one that works. Either that helps you gain some skill or experience that you think you need to ultimately end up where you want to be. Maybe it's in the correct geographic location that you need to be for this point in your career. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be a step in the right direction, even if it's a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. And you'll probably hear it a million times. You've probably already heard it a million times. Networking is super important. Build your network, maintain your network, cultivate your real relationships.
Absolutely. And I think a big one for me is don't just acknowledge your technical expertise. You're going to get your PhD and be a technical expert at something, right? But your degree represents a whole lot more than that. It represents planning, execution, writing, putting together those PowerPoint presentations, figuring out the time management piece. There's so much behind the scenes that goes into that degree that is not represented on that piece of paper. So don't be afraid to lean into those skills and apply to things. Maybe you're a PhD in science, but you're applying to a business role. Okay, great. We're excited about that because you have so many skills that are going to transfer into business. So don't be afraid to acknowledge those other skills.
I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I would just say network, talk to people. If you have reps that come into your lab, talk to them. They won't bite you, I promise. They're happy to share like their business knowledge, their experience, kind of how they've gone through things. Reach out to any of us, obviously offline. But yeah, just network and talk to people is the best way. The best thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of same thing. Don't look for the perfect fit, but really find a role that grows the skills that you need for the future career goal. So as I mentioned about wanting to start a company, I need to understand more commercial side of things, but I didn't start off there. I needed a transition into commercial side of things, which was the field application scientist role. And along with that, you want to look for companies that support your professional development. So even if it's not a job that this is what you exactly wanted, but you want to be able to grow those skills while being in a role. And for our company, we have mentorship programs. We have tuition reimbursement program. So I've utilized that and gotten a certificate through the online Stanford website for product manager certificate. And lastly, I just want to say that don't feel discouraged if you're not hearing back from your applications. I started applying right before COVID, so it was very, very challenging times. They weren't hiring at all. And I understand you guys are probably facing similar challenges. And it's not you, it's just really, really challenging to be transitioning from academia into industry where you're competing with people who already have industry experiences. So it's not because you're not qualified, it's just that there's a wide range of like a huge pool of people who are also qualified. So please don't feel discouraged and just continue to keep applying.
Thank you. Well, I think with that, we've given a lot of background information, and there have been several questions that came up in the chat and in the Q&A. So we could take a few minutes to go through some of these. And I could just start from the beginning. Someone who is interested specifically in learning more about non-traditional roles, such as how to pivot from neuroscience to something like strategy or something in competitive intelligence. How can you get experience with a PhD to ultimately get into a director role? Anyone have any feedback specific to that?
I think I can take a crack at this one because I touch on strategy in my job role, especially to get up to director. Obviously, there's going to be some steps to get there. But again, kind of not being afraid to reach out of the scientific arena and touch into that business side of things. And getting the experience, just get your foot in the door. I think that's the biggest thing starting out is get your foot in the door. Doesn't even matter what you're doing. Because once you're in the door, you can network, you'll meet people, you'll talk, and you're going to just move from there. Everything's going to evolve on its own. So that's my biggest advice. Get your foot in the door. If there's a specific company that you're super interested in or a specific arena of science that you really want to stay in, find something in that arena. And then once you have that foot in the door, you can start talking more about the strategy, aligning with the strategy of the company, things like that. One of the biggest things I do is make sure that all of our projects that we're executing on are aligned with the strategy of the company, because if it's not, it gets axed, right? So we have to make sure we do have that strategic alignment. It is really important at every level. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
And I'll add, for those that are still in a PhD program, I think there was a while I was in my PhD program where I was so focused on getting to the finish line that I could have pushed my defense out 6 months, and probably that would have been a great decision because I could have taken advantage of more programs that were offered to PhD students, like science communication courses or programs outside of your regular kind of work day. That biotech career development program that I failed out of, it was meant for grad students. I clawed my way in after, but I should have taken advantage of that while I was still a PhD student. And so many of these other types of things that I think are existing more and more in academia as we realize not everyone who's getting a PhD is going to find a home in academia. So look for those resources at your institutions or even within your alumni organizations and see if there's ways that you can gain some of those skills or at least learn about them, start applying that knowledge earlier. Tech transfer offices, that kind of thing.
With that, there are questions about how to balance the lab work and other expectations from the program with doing the outside programs that you had mentioned and that type of thing. You mentioned pushing out 6 months and you're defending your thesis so that you can have more time to do it. Are there any other suggestions in trying to balance that time?
I had to have really honest conversations with my PI about what my goals were. And luckily for me, she was very supportive of those goals. So we made a plan of how I could balance both of them. Otherwise, I don't want to say like, I don't know, what work-life balance might not be the best during that time, but it gets better. It's not the best advice, but it's an option.
Yeah, it is tough. I will say, I'm sad to say my PhD was almost 20 years ago, aging myself there, but there was no balance for me, honestly. And my PI was not supportive. When I said I wanted to go into industry, I got reamed out about how frustrating it was to train a scientist who wasn't going to be a scientist. I changed his mind, by the way, but but you may be on your own to figure it out, and that's okay too. I mean, you do what you can with what you have. I will say when I was in graduate school, we had no scientific communications classes. Everyone was on their own. Robert Day's How to Write a Scientific Paper is still on my shelf because that was my class. So don't be afraid to find your own resources if they're not available to you. But the balance is hard. It's just going to be a season. And if you can't do it, if you can't do that extracurricular, focus on attaining the one thing first, right? And then maybe you do a postdoc and then you have a little more bandwidth, or maybe you take in just an entry-level research tech role in a facility somewhere, and then you have bandwidth. I will say, when I did make the transition out of the academic research and into a quote real job, working for a hospital and a core facility, I was not allowed to work overtime. And I felt like I was on vacation all the time. 40 hours a week was easy peasy after graduate school.
Maybe my opinion on work-life balance is it doesn't exist, right? There's always too much work. There's always too much private things that you want to do. It's all about work-life choices that you have to make. And throughout your career, what you will notice is you will have periods where it's extremely busy. You have periods where you have more bandwidth. But what is important is that you make that choice for yourself on what you want to do at this point in your life. Can I bear the workload? But I think try to make that choice, I think is what helped me.
All right. Pivoting a little bit to someone who started their PhD knowing they want to return to industry, are there any tips on how to stay connected with industry and keeping up to date on how the field evolves while they're in academia?
I would say this comes back to networking. Keep your network strong, talk to people, talk to reps. We all kind of know what the market's doing, how the wind is blowing. So I would say stay connected with people would be the best thing to do.
Yeah, I would also add, don't be afraid to subscribe to whether it's tech news sites or just the emails. Like for MilliporeSigma, if you're on the email list, yes, some of it's going to be marketing emails, but not all of it, because when we have new product launches, man, you're going to have seminars coming out about it, things like that. So there are so many ways to stay connected with the big players in the industry. Just stay subscribed to those things, read the headlines, dive in if it looks like something really cool and interesting to you. But even if you're just skimming the headlines, you're going to see if some trend is changing or something like that. That'll kind of keep you in the loop.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely networking and kind of trying to go. Nucleate is a great way to go networking, and there's a lot of different events. If you're in the BioHub, there's definitely more events available, but you can also look on Eventbrite or something. They can be webinars or it can be in person. Those are great ways to go. And if you're still in school, this is a great time to pair up with a friend and go to one of these networking events and practice talking to these people when it's not essential for you to get a job yet. It's a great time to be practicing and really trying to meet with people and understand what the industry is looking like.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Are there any tips on learning about multi-year omni-channel marketing and such? This person sees the skill listed in job postings.
Yeah, I can try to tackle that one as well. So omni-channel it's kind of a strategy for integrating all channels of communication, right? So whether it's digital, physical, you'll see print ads for MilliporeSigma in Nature or Science or whatever other journals, but you're also going to see a social media presence. You're also going to see the website ads, the email banners, things like that. So omni-channel is a strategy where you use all channels available to target an audience or to spread information. And so honestly, again, follow them on social media, right? Follow the tech companies on social media. You're going to get a taste of what their branding is like, what type of information they're sharing. If there is a trending topic or a hot new product launch, you're going to see it there and you'll start to pick up. It's one of those things. It's what do they call it, where that part of your brain like gets activated when you like you buy a certain car and then you see that car everywhere on the road. Once you start picking up those trends, you will notice them more and more. So just by following, you will start to see things. But yeah, omni-channel marketing, it's just taking advantage of all possible channels, honestly, meeting the customer where they are. Yes, cognitive bias. There we go. Confirmation bias. Everyone knows.
All right. Well, I would like to take time to thank our panelists and our audience for taking the time to join today. A couple of reminders. We do have the fellowship application open, and Carolyn has dropped it in the chat a couple of times. The campuses we are focusing on: Duke, Rice, UT Austin, UCSF, Berkeley, and UCLA. This is a pilot program. Hopefully we'll expand it in the future. And then regardless of the fellowship, if you're interested in learning more about selling, we do have 3 more webinars to follow this up. They'll be focused more on selling 101 and the skills needed to do so. So the next one will be next Friday, same time, and then December 5th and December 12th. We'll be focusing on behaviors and characteristics of a salesperson, what's important or not important, building relationships, so talking more about that prospecting and networking type of opportunities, and finally going into negotiating and closing. So those will be our final ones. And with that, towards the end of the year, we'll make some decisions on the fellowship and move on from there. And I hope that everyone's enjoyed this. I've seen a lot of LinkedIn links put into the chat, so feel free to connect with all of us. We're happy to talk and answer questions you may have.